Welcome to the Totally Honest Cooking Show. I'm Mark. Today we are looking at a very special recipe. Her Royal Majesty Queen Elizabeth II of England has died, and while the world braces to determine what's going on, and while the world braces to decide what the next stage of the monarchy is, or while the world mourns or even celebrates her death, I'm here to ask and answer one question, and that's, did she cook? And the answer seems to be yes. While other channels might make political statements, the Totally Honest Cooking Show does not tend to go political, so this will not be a political examination of the monarchy. Instead, we are looking at Queen Elizabeth's recipe for drop scones, aka Scottish pancakes, supposedly. This recipe comes to us from the American National Archives. Apparently, the Queen made them at a party in 1959 for President Eisenhower, and as far as I can tell, she did in fact make them herself. And then she sent a recipe over in 1960 along with a note. The note said to replace the sugar with treacle. I'm not making treacle because I don't have a lemon. Treacle is a golden syrup made from water, sugar, and lime juice. Her recipe is quite simple because, it's pancakes, basically, with a couple switches. 4 teacups flour. A teacup is equal to 3/4 of an imperial cup. It was used prior to, 1915 in America. Our modern idea of cups and whatnot, the imperial cup, comes from a cook in Boston whose name escapes me right now, who had a very famous cookbook. Anyway, 4 teacups flour, 4 tablespoons castor sugar, which is just finely ground sugar, 2 teacups milk, 2 whole eggs, 2 teaspoons bicarbonate soda, that's baking soda, 3 teaspoons cream of tartar, that is an acid that will cause the reaction with the baking soda. We'll talk about that in a second. And 2 tablespoons melted butter. Now, we are making one change to the Queen's recipe. I know, right? Sacrilege. And that is, we are substituting baking powder for baking soda and cream of tartar. Now, what is any of this crap? That is the question that some of you might be asking me right now before we get into the actual cookery and the recipe. Baking soda is a basic leavening product. You take baking soda, you add it to an acid, as every kid knows, and you create carbon dioxide, right? So there's our baking soda, here's some vinegar, and we get a reaction, right? You see the bubble, 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 bubble. There are a lot of ways to go about getting that reaction out of the baking soda. You could use lemon juice. You could use buttermilk. You can use milk that has soured a little bit. All of these are acceptable ways to make a cake rise or to raise bread or anything, really. Yeast is another way of doing that. The yeast eats the sugar, the yeast off gases, and the bread rises, right? That works. So, the Queen's recipe calls for bicarbonate soda, baking soda, and cream of tartar. This is actually a byproduct of winemaking. After you make the wine, this is left on the inside of the casks and dried off, scraped off, jarred, and it's kind of expensive. This was like $5 for this little package. Now, if we take it and we add water to it, notice you get a reaction, right? Now, here's why we're going to use baking powder instead. Baking powder is baking soda plus a reactive agent. There are 2 kinds that are common today. One is this one, which has sodium aluminum sulfate in it, which will react together to make the same bubbly situation. Okay, you're not seeing it like you did with the others, but I promise it's there. There is double action baking powder. Now the second action, notice, oh, it's starting. You're getting it. It's not as strong as in this one, but you're getting it. The reason that this is important though, this is called double acting baking powder because at Chex Notes, 140 degrees Fahrenheit or 60 degrees Celsius, it's going to react again, and it's going to give it a push right when it's cooking, right when it needs to rise. The problem with cream of tartar, other than the fact that this little tiny jar costs $5, is that what you get is what you see, and it's already starting to stop bubbling, right? So the goal when it comes to cooking with cream of tartar is to heat it up as soon as possible so you don't lose that oomph that you get from the off-gassing as a result of the chemical reaction. So instead of using her recipe with the bicarbonate soda and the cream of tartar, we can just replace it entirely with baking powder. I'm probably going to mix baking soda and baking powder because, I don't know. The reason that we would replace that is because it's going to be more efficient. There is no universe in which the cream of tartar is going to result in a better, flakier pastry or more risen drop scone than baking powder. It's just the bubbles. It's the way that it works. Okay. I'll be back in a second with the actual setup to do the pancakes, and we'll get it done. Let's take a look at the Queen's method. It says beat eggs, sugar, and about half the milk together. Add flour, mix well together, adding remainder of milk as required. Also bicarbonate and cream of tartar. Fold in the melted butter. So we've got a mixture of dry and wet ingredients that we're mixing at different intervals. I feel as though we can start the dry ingredients first. Full disclosure, there is a Simply Recipes article where they examine this in full. I did the calculations before I noticed it, and there's some more history and more interesting facts there. But they also did it that way. I prefer to add wets to dry, not dry to wet, just because it's easier to incorporate for me. I don't know if I'm the only one that experiences that. Also note that it says the bicarbonate and the cream of tartar go in last for probably the reason that I gave you earlier. You want that reaction as close to the cooking as possible. By subbing in baking powder, we have to worry about it less. So we're going to go ahead and add in 3 cups of flour. Next up, we've got 4 tablespoons of caster sugar. Again, that's superfine sugar. It's quick dissolve. It's all that stuff. 4 tablespoons is equal to 1/4 an imperial cup, so I'm just going to do that. Oops, that's kind of heaping. That'll be okay. You can make little mistakes like that. Honestly, if we were doing this with regular sugar and not superfine sugar, you would probably do a heaping cup of the regular sugar anyway, just because bigger grains, less sugar, right? More space in between, I guess, if that makes sense. Anyway, because you gotta think about just placement and the space in between things as we learn, or as we will learn in a future episode where I try to make stock. Next comes our 2 teaspoons baking soda. And then 3 teaspoons cream of tartar, which I'm just gonna go ahead and add in 3 teaspoons of baking powder. Again, you could probably just do 5 teaspoons of baking powder, just because. Was that 3? I think that was 3. I don't think more baking powder will mess this up. I hope. Whoopsie doodle? Question mark. Whoopsie doodle, the legend continues, but whoopsie doodle, the legend lives on. So I've melted the butter, and I'm beating the 2 eggs. And I've gotten down my mixer. You could probably do this by hand. I imagine that a lot of people do, but I am not. You're going to incorporate this a little bit. Then you are going to start to add in our various liquids. Okay, I think we've run into the reverse of the cheesecake paradox, where with the cheesecake I should have used the whisk attachment, or I shouldn't have used the whisk attachment, I should have used the paddle attachment. Here I probably should have used the whisk attachment. I think it would probably have been a little bit better. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. And I'm also going to go ahead and add the butter. Okay. Now, here's the thing. Gotta scrape down the sides. Try to scrape the bottom, right? Fold it. Fold it. Fold it. Fold it. Fold it. Okay. Looks pretty good. Looks like a batter. Gonna go ahead and heat my cast iron skillet. Now, I'm going over medium heat. However, again, I have one of the worst apartment kitchens in the continental United States. The 6 on here is about the 7 or 8 over here. So, I don't know, man. Couldn't tell you. But I always start on medium. You can always go lower. My cast iron skillet comes up to temp. I've oiled it. I'm throwing on a pat of butter because butter is delicious. I'm going to drop in a 1/3 cup of this and see what happens. The Queen's recipe says that it makes approximately 16 of these. I don't know, man. Couldn't tell you. We'll see. And look at that. Pretty golden brown. Looks like a pancake. Still looks to be rising on the other side. That's a good sign. Maybe I should have given it a little longer. They might be raw in the middle. We'll find out. You could absolutely have mixed these with that spatula that I used to clean off the first beater that I really probably didn't need to switch off of, to be honest with you. Yeah, they're still kind of liquidy in the middle. Lower the temperature. We've hit the smoke point on the butter is what's happening here. Just so you know. We're not burning the pancake, we're burning the butter. Which is still not ideal. Yeah, see how we're getting leakage? Okay. I'm going to check this first one for doneness. Looks like some of it is kind of raw in the middle. You can kind of tell right there. Other than that, it's okay. Let's see how it tastes. Quite airy, crispy on the outside. Kind of bland, but you're supposed to serve these with golden syrup or butter or something like that. Americans and Canadians, you can use maple syrup. I'm going to use blackberry preserves and maple syrup, actually. But now, let's do it this way. There we go. Spread it out a little bit. I mean, I guess we could probably go lower and slower. We'll play with it a little bit. How about that? They are pancakes, though. They're pretty good. Okay. So the problem with the smush the pancake method is that you wind up losing a lot of that beautiful crust. So it's probably better to go low and slow. Oh, they are just like pancakes. They start getting the little holes in the top. I wish I would have thought of that before. That was not smart. Whoopsie doodle? Question mark? No judgment. Jerkins, cut that. Okay, I'm gonna finish these up. I'm gonna do the rest of these and then we'll take a look at the finished product. Okay, with this one I waited until there were a lot more of the dots like you would with more traditional pancakes. Let's see if I burned the crust. No, looks okay. Okay, we've learned how to do this, maybe. Maybe. Still a little battery, but looks like low and slow is the way to go on these. I did find that you get a slightly better rise out of them and slightly more even cooking if you go smaller. Some of my research indicated that these were supposed to be silver dollar size. I've never had drop scones before, only American pancakes. What I can tell you is that we don't end up with the 16 of them that her recipe said that this should make if we make fat American pancakes. So we're making a couple silver dollar ones ish, you know. They're gonna fluff up and spread out regardless just because of the way I made the dough. But that seems to be about the size we want to go for. And I'll be back again in a minute. I got cocky when I put the last two on and they kind of singed the tops a little bit. They got a little bit burned. But they otherwise look okay. I'm gonna go ahead and top them. I've got maple syrup. And because I am making a royal recipe, I am using seedless blackberry preserves in the hopes that I will somehow achieve elegance and comfort. Being that I'm American, the Queen's death does not affect me directly. It is kind of the end of an era in Britain, and it, you know, the Queen was one of those figures that's always been there, you know. So I felt like it was important to do something to commemorate it. Well, commemorate. I felt like it was important to do something to recognize the event. Regardless of how you feel, the question at hand here is, could the Queen cook? Specifically, was this family recipe any good? And now that I've made a mess and whoopsie doodled, I can say, yeah, it's pretty good. I dropped a scone on the floor. I'm very posh. Like, subscribe, click the little bell. I highly recommend the blackberry preserves. And I'll see you next time, hopefully under less sad circumstances. Bye.